Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the name of Allah, the All Merciful, the Ever Merciful, and all praise and blessings of Allah be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and all other prophets and messengers from Adam alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his companions and his followers and his household. So, inshallah, we will get started right now with part number 12 of Life of the Prophet ﷺ series. And in part number 12, we will talk mainly about a very major and significant battle or encounter with the Quraysh again, or the Meccans for the second time. That was like the big encounter between both the Muslims in Medina and the Meccans for the second time after battle of Badr. And this one is very, very significant because that's going to cause a lot of struggles for the Muslims, knowing from the results of that one, and also it will help us to kind of like shed more light in how the Prophet ﷺ, peace and bliss of Allah be upon him, dealt with a bunch of crises that were hitting the Muslims, each one after another, and as I said before, Muslims were always in dangers in Medina, and they were always like trying to protect themselves because everyone around them sees them as kind of like a threat. So anyway, so inshallah we will get started right now talking about this one in more detail. So let's go ahead and just share the screen. Should be ready now. Just give me a second. Okay. Yes, so we are good now. So part number 12. Okay. So before I start, I would like to kind of like recap and how we ended in part number 11 and see like big things. We talked mostly about the end of the Battle of Badr, and we have seen the results of 70 dead people from Quraysh, and 70 others were taken as hostages or were taken as captives. And we talked about some major battles, 9 battles between the Battle of Badr or 9 expeditions between the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Uhud. Today, inshallah, we'll talk about the Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Badr is named after the town or a small village or wells are called Badr. Uhud was named after a big hill or a mountain in 3 miles north of Medina. So let's talk about the basic information, and then after this we'll talk about each one of them in details, and we'll see some kind of like footage or some kind of maps that will open up our eyes, and then we kind of like narrate the events from the beginning until the end, and then we talk about some lessons that we can learn from that. So first, the Battle of Uhud. So what happened is that the chiefmen of Quraysh were killed. Most of them were killed in Badr. So when they went back, they were mourning, and they wanted to take revenge. We learned this last time when we talked about Abu Sufyan tried to go and attack Medina with around 200 men. That's in number 3. The Battle of Khor, number 4. The expedition of Suwayq or Wheat, 22 months after the Hijrah. So Abu Sufyan tried to go and attack Medina. Abu Sufyan now is like the new patriarch, the new chiefman of Quraysh, or the tribe of Quraysh. And Abu Sufyan tried to attack Medina after this, but he didn't succeed. So anyway, he took a pledge over himself not to take a shower until he take revenge of the dead people of Badr. So Meccans were not easy about what happened in Badr. This is why they were plotting all the time to attack Medina and go to Medina itself. They were not waiting for Muslims to engage with them in any kind of like a war or fight outside of Medina. They wanted to go to Medina. So anyway, Abu Sufyan did kind of like allyship among different other tribes other than Quraysh and in the neighborhood of Quraysh, and then he collected altogether 3,000 men, 3,000 armed men to come together, and then around 15 women came as like cheerleaders, in the culture now, talking about cheerleaders. So they actually at that time they had women coming with them to cheer them and to encourage them with the leadership of someone called Hind bint Utbah, and Hind bint Utbah was the wife of Abu Sufyan. So Abu Sufyan went with 3,000 people, with them through 15 women. So the date of the fight of the war was around Saturday 7th of Shawwal, which is the 10th month of the Islamic calendar, and that was 3 years after the Hijrah, or exactly 32 months after the immigration of the Prophet, which coinciding or corresponding with 22nd of December 624 CE. The reason is, as I said, to retaliate from the killed ones, or retaliate for the killed ones from Quraysh in Badr, which is 2 years after the Hijrah, was like a year ago before, or a year before the Battle of Uhud. Parties, here we have Muslims with the leadership of the Prophet ﷺ, peace and the bliss of Allah be upon him, and Quraysh with the leadership of Abu Sufyan, and his actual name is Sakhr ibn Harb min Bani Umayyah. Place, when they met next to the Medina, to a hill of Uhud, 3 miles north of Medina, and we see the maps. Results, Muslims started with a victory, yet, and you gotta be careful with this yet, because we need to underline this yet, and then we will understand why it is yet. They retreated at the end, and they were kind of like defeated in that battle, with 70 Muslims were martyrs in that battle, and around 25 people and 70 others were injured roughly, and 70 others. So you're talking about like a big number, and I will tell you why, because the number of the whole army is not that big, and also then because of the mistake of archers, and we know what their mistake exactly. Also, I forgot to add something here, the numbers of the armies. Muslims were 700 people, 700 went out, and they didn't have a lot of things, but they were more prepared. Quraysh was 3,000. Okay, so you're talking about each one of these, we're going to at least to meet 4 to fight for others. So there's no balance in that, but just it's something that will help us understand what's going to happen exactly. So anyway, we talked about this. How did the Prophet, peace and bliss of Allah be upon him, knew about this, that Quraysh was coming to him? His uncle was living in Quraysh, in Mecca. And his uncle, Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, he was in a Muslim back in that time, but he told the Prophet ﷺ that Quraysh was collecting an army coming to attack Medina. This is why the Prophet ﷺ sent some intelligence to get the news, and then he prepared for this. So let's go ahead and dig deeper. First, Quraysh, when they tried to go, they went outside of Mecca, tried to attack Medina itself, so they were heading to Medina. So the Prophet went north of it. If you look at Medina, Medina is like this, is a mountain, is palm trees here, palm trees in the south, and some fortress of the Jews, and like mountains in both ways, and palm trees in the south, I mean. And you see that, the palm trees everywhere, so the Medina is kind of protected in all ways except the north. And there's the mountain of Uhud around 3 miles north of Medina itself. So the Prophet ﷺ went outside of Medina to meet Quraysh or Meccans who are coming to attack Medina from here, because that's the only entrance. So they met here in Uhud. That's just to give you like a glimpse where that happened exactly, and how far is it from Medina of the Prophet, or the city of the Prophet ﷺ. At the beginning, when the Prophet knew about this, so he wanted to fight them inside Medina itself, inside the city, because the city is a bunch of houses with flat roof, so they can have everyone attacking the army that is attacking Medina, and that will make Medina stronger and will attack them. The Prophet ﷺ, that's his idea, and he wanted to do that. But when Badr happened, there's so many people, especially the younger ones, did not participate in it because it wasn't expected to be a very major battle with very significant victory over Quraysh. So they said they told the Prophet, no, O Messenger of Allah, we need to go outside of Medina and fight them. We're not cowards to wait for them here. We're going outside to protect our city and then fight them. So the Prophet did not want this. But he took a consultation where, and the majority of the companions and the followers wanted to go outside and fight outside of Medina, while the chiefmen or the leaders or the elders wanted to stay in Medina and fight it along with the Prophet himself. So the Prophet took the opinion or took the consultation of the majority, and he said okay, and then but he wasn't very happy about it. But when the companions found that they kind of like pressured him to go outside of Medina and fight the enemies outside of Medina, they felt kind of bad. This is why they told him, "Oh Messenger of Allah, I've been tough with you. We can stay here if you want." But that was too late because he put on his la'matu. La'matu is shield. Like when in the past they have shields to protect their chest and the helmet or like something like that to protect their head, and have like their war clothes that kind of like more protective to their bodies, their souls, and all of these ones. And he refused to go back to fight in Medina because he told them, once I put this on, we're going out and let's go ahead, inshallah, and depend on Allah and rely on Allah, and inshallah we seek victory out there. So they went outside. When they went outside, they went in the mountain of Uhud. This is why it's called the Battle of Uhud. They went here, and then when they went here, the Muslims kind of like the Muslims organized or stationed themselves in Uhud. So let's see how that works. If you look here, that's the Quraysh camp, and that's the Muslims camp. And here the Prophet put 50 archers in called Jabal Rama, I think, or I think that's the name of the mountain, or a small tiny hill to protect. So here the army cannot go here. So they have to meet each other. The only way to go back in the Muslims is to pass that hill and go back and fight them and make like a scissor or clipper against Muslims. So back and forth. But these 50 people were put there according to the Prophet ﷺ, asked them to be there. He told them, regardless of what happened in the battle, we are going to stay there. But let's go back a little bit because I want to talk about something different as well. Okay, so when the Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ took the decision already, and he's already leaving Medina, going to meet the Meccans and the enemies at the front range or at the valley, or kind of like the bottom of the mountain of Uhud. When he went with 1,000 people, roughly 1,000 soldiers. When he went outside, there was one of the leaders of Khazraj, one of the big clans or sub-clans in Medina. His name is Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. That's a really famous name because this one was a huge trouble to Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ, and he was always causing a lot of troubles. He was the leader of hypocrites in Medina. He refused to become a Muslim, and then after that he found everybody became a Muslim, so they said, okay, I'll become a Muslim, but actually he became a Muslim with his tongue, not his heart. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, hum lil kufri yawma idin aqrabu minhum lil iman. So they are very close to disbelief and not to believe, far more closer to be believers. So anyway, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, he was one of the camps, one of the people that wanted to stay in Medina. So when he found the Prophet left, he told the Prophet, I'm going back, and he asked his supporters, and he took out of 1,000 soldier army 300 soldiers, and they went back to him. Not just this. Look how kind of like a group can affect individuals. Other clans, because how the army was organized, the army was organized from clans, and in these clans, under the big umbrella, all of them Muslims, and also the Jews were supposed to come outside, and the non-Muslims supposed to go with the Muslims to go and fight as well. Do you remember the constitution of Medina, the first thing that the Prophet did when he went to Medina? So that's part of the constitution. When Medina is attacked, all the inhabitants and residents of Medina need to fight for Medina. So the Jews refused to join. That's one thing. That's one setback that's happened, and one kind of like shock, and one exposure of the intentions of people. The Jewish tribes and clans didn't want to participate, and even they made noise and they were making fun of Muslims. Number two, there's the leader of hypocrites, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, came back with 300 in the way. Like once they got out of Medina, he changed his mind and said, "No, I'm not going outside of Medina." I told him to not to follow these young, unwise kids in that way, and then he took with him 300. Even some other two clans, Abu Salama clan, Banu Salama clan, and Banu Haritha clan, they were about to even retreat as well, and there will be around probably 100 more. But Alhamdulillah, they kind of like been advised. Some people even advised the people, the 300, going back to Medina and telling him, please come back. We need to defend our own city, and we need to defend our own people, and we need to defend our own faith as well. But they didn't listen to them, and they tried their best, but they didn't listen to them. Someone like, for example, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Haram, he was super disappointed by the 300 people going back and tried to remind them of Allah, remind them of protection of their families and the city and their wealth and all of that, but they did not listen, and the Prophet ﷺ did not pay that much attention. And imagine being an army, meeting an army 3 times your size, and now 1/3 of your own army, roughly 1/3 of your army, is going back. So that was kind of like emotionally, it's kind of like it's challenging for the Muslims. But the Prophet ﷺ was steadfast, and he asked them to go further and not even to seek any help from anyone, and he moved on. So anyway, that's a big major event that happened when the Muslim army was leaving Medina to protect it. And once they arrived at Uhud, they stationed, and when they stationed, they made the mountain in the left, and the archers at the top of the hill, Rama, made them to kind of like to protect the right, and then they stationed to face to face the Quraysh people. And after this, after it faced that, so they started. So the camp. Let's go back to see like how the Prophet ﷺ organized the camps. So if you see that, we will see that here the arms were here, the armors. The first phase, Muslims were here. The Muslim camp was here. Armors were here. The archers hell was here. Muslim camp was here, and the Meccans camp was here. So the Meccans camp was put in three infantry or 3 sections. There's the section of Ikrimah, the section of Abu Sufyan, the main leader of the army, and also the Khalid ibn Walid section stopping here. So they tried to go back. So anyway, we have 50 here. So Khalid ibn Walid with his camp and with his soldiers or knights, they couldn't go farther because they have 50 archers. If they go farther, the 50 archers were going to kill them. And they are upheld, so they have a full sight of them. So anyway, so the Muslims were here, and the non-Muslims were here, and the Prophet ﷺ divided the Muslims, Ansar and Khazraj, with leadership of Hubayb ibn al-Mundhir, and after this, al-Muhajirin, Mus'ab ibn Umayr, and after that, al-Ansar and Aws, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam as well, and the Prophet ﷺ camp was here, there. to watch over that and also to be part of it. So anyway, so that's the beginning, or that's the stationary things. At the beginning, or when before the battle began, Abu Sufyan tried to divide the ranks of the Muslim. So he sent the messenger of Allah, the messenger to Al Ansar, saying to them, "Do not stand between us and our cousins." So he tried to do a trick. He told them, "We're coming to find our cousins who are immigrants to your place. So do not stand between us and them, and leave them to us, and we're going to fight them." But that failed, and the battle started. When the battle started, we need to pay attention to a bunch of names here that are really significant in that battle. First of all, we have a name called Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, that was the uncle of the Prophet, and he was kind of like one of the big knights, or the very skillful, strong knights, and members of the army of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was kind of like one of those leaders that actually was kind of like a big target for Quraysh. Why? Because Hamza killed Abu Sufyan's father-in-law, Abu Sufyan's brother-in-law, and Abu Sufyan's father-in-law's brother. This is why Abu Sufyan, the leader of Quraysh, he came with women, and members of the women was his own wife, Hind bint Utbah. So that was a target for them. Hamza was one of those leaders, and those courageous fighters, was kind of like a very courageous fighter. So they assigned one person with a spear to do nothing but to kill Hamza as he started. And the battle began. So now the battle began. The Muslims were seemingly being victorious, fighting and fighting and fighting, and Quraysh was retreating and retreating and retreating and retreating, until it seems that Quraysh was running away. Here comes the shifting point. When Quraysh was running away and they were retreating, the women tried to push them back, and even Hind bint Utbah had like a kind of like a poem or a song saying like إن تقبلوا نعانق ونفرش النمارق وإن تدبروا نفارق فراقا غير وامق, or فراق غير وامق. That means like, if you go forward and fight, we're going to give you hugs, and then we prepare the beds and all that, encouraging men to fight. And if you run away and retreat, we leave you and we ditch you, or kind of like we will not be with you anymore forever. So she was kind of like cheering them. Also in the Muslims, there were women as well in the army, like Sayyidah Aisha or Sayyidah Salama, two wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The lady Aisha, peace be upon her, may Allah be pleased with her, and the Sayyidah Salama, may Allah be pleased with her, and Umara, Umara Sumayya, and she is one of that leaders that from Al Ansar, that actually one of that prominent women that even protected the Prophet eventually in the battle. So the Muslims were gaining victory, and when the archers saw that, they went down. So they were here, they saw the Muslim army going forward, and these ones are running. And so they went down to collect the spoils. What are the spoils? Camels, shields, swords, spears, arrows, food, all of these ones. So they went, except like a few of them, 2-3 of them were there. So you have 50 people went out. This one was still here. He did not move. So when he found these people went down, so if he go now with his horses, nobody can stop them anymore, because there's 1 or 2. It's not going to be hard. So he went out, killed the people here, went out to the Muslim army, and these ones came back again to fight, and there's fighting from here, and both of them fighting, and the Muslims were kind of like struggling with that. So many people were killed, and they reached to the Prophet ﷺ himself, and they arrived to him, and they almost killed him. So let me tell you more. So now this is archers, Muslims, non-Muslims, coming here, and the mountain of Uhud here, and goes on and on. So let's keep going more. So when the Muslims were kind of like, there was something happened in between and they were struggling, so that the shift happened and the Muslims tried to fight back, but many of them being killed. Examples of these are almost like 70 people, such as Anas ibn Nadr, one of the leaders of Al Ansar. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the first teacher, was killed. The Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib was killed. And it is a small, like an information or a story about him. Someone called Wahshi. He was the one that was assigned to kill Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet himself. And the Wahshi said, I did nothing by watching over him, and I've seen him killing people left and right or attacking people, and very strong man. And then I tried until I found out that this is a good spot, and then he threw the spear in his belly button under this area until the spear came out of his back of his body, and then he fell dead. Mus'ab ibn Umayr kept fighting. He was one of the carriers of the flag, and he kept fighting and fighting, and then he was killed until they couldn't recognize him. The same is as Anas ibn Nadr. You couldn't recognize him at all until they reached the Prophet ﷺ, and someone called Ibn Qami'ah, I think that's the name. He arrived to the Prophet ﷺ, and there were a bunch of people trying to go targeting the Prophet himself to kill him. Once they kill the Prophet, that's like a very clear victory in terms of that, if they kill the Prophet ﷺ. So they reached out to him, and Ibn Qami'ah threw something at the Prophet, and he hit him, and his helmet kind of like poked in his face, and kind of like broke his like his kind of like big teeth over there, or their canals over there. So these two sides, the right and left. So the Prophet ﷺ, and even he said, Ibn Qami'ah said, I killed Muhammad, Muhammad is killed. And when the Muslims heard that, they kind of like, it's like a rock. You throw a rock in each one's of them's face. All of them kind of like went down emotionally, and they kept, and some of the other Muslims, they kept encouraging them. It doesn't matter the Prophet was killed or not. They believed that the Prophet ﷺ was killed, and we will fight until the last breath of us. And they kept fighting, but it was hard. And then after this, the Prophet ﷺ, they were attacking him. They came on Umara, and she and the other women in the army, they were taking the injured, trying to give them some water and try to heal them or put them aside. And Umara, she threw all of that. She took a sword and they started fighting the people who are attacking the Prophet ﷺ. Talha ibn Ubaidillah and some others, and the Qatada and some others companions came and made a shield around the Prophet ﷺ when he went down bleeding, to protect him. And Ali ibn Abi Talib and some other companions protected the Prophet ﷺ, and he was bleeding, and they tried to protect him, to make sure that nobody would reach out to him and kill him. And he was bleeding at this time. And then after this, the Prophet ﷺ ordered the army to retreat. Where they retreated, they retreated here to go to the mountain. Inshallah, we are almost done. I'm sorry that we took a little bit of time. So the Prophet ﷺ, they retreated here, went uphill, all the army. And the ones who were injured, died, they died here. So the Quraysh kept going to the ones who died or injured and kept killing anyone they know that they still alive. And Hind bint Utbah, Abu Sufyan's wife, she went to Hamza. She was looking for him because she wanted to take revenge. She went to Hamza body, and then she started opening up his belly, and then taking his heart and his liver, and she chewed in them, and then she spit them out. And some others, they start to tamthil, they start kind of like cutting noses, cutting ears, cutting limbs, and the Quraysh people started like anyone who's alive, they kill them. Anyone who's dead, they start messing with their bodies over there. The Muslims went there, and then Abu Sufyan went there, and then he kept bragging with the Prophet ﷺ, and he told them, Muhammad is dead, Muhammad is dead, Muhammad is dead. Until they told the Prophet ﷺ told them, don't you respond to him? They told them that the Prophet ﷺ is not dead, and he's alive, and he hears you now. Umar ibn Khattab said that to Abu Sufyan. So Abu Sufyan heard about the death of the Prophet ﷺ from Ibn Qamiyah, the one who tried to kill him, and it seems for him that the Prophet fell down and died. But when he went to the Muslims and tried to brag to them and tell them, one day for another day, like now you won over us in Badr, now we won over you in Uhud. So Umar ibn Khattab told him that the Prophet is not dead. So look at this response from him. He told him, I swear that you are more truthful for me, Umar, than Ibn Qamiyah, the one that he told me that the Prophet ﷺ died. And then they started messing with the army. The Prophet ﷺ did not leave the uphill that the Muslims left. And then he thought that Quraysh, after this victory, they were heading to Medina itself. So now they're going to kill the rest of other people. Medina, now they're victorious. They're ready to, and now the heat it's the climax, and now they killed many people, and all of these ones, they want, the Prophet thought that they're going to Medina. But luckily, Abu Sufyan took a decision that that's enough, and he is heading back to Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ sent some intelligence to check. He told them, look at them. If you see them riding their horses and arming and all of that, that means that they are heading to Medina, because they are willing to fight more. If you see them riding their camels and the women getting in howdaj or their rooms in the camels and all of that, that means they're going back to their homes in Mecca and celebrate that. So we have seen a bunch of lessons that we can learn from here, and then inshallah we end up with this. We have reports from the books of history and the books of the life of the Prophet ﷺ that were written about the life of the Prophet, about the names of the people that were martyrs from the Muslims, and even the people that were killed. Around 25 people were killed in Mecca, and 70 people were martyrs from Muslims. Lessons that we can learn. First, the exposure of the hypocrites. That's number one. Or before number one, actually, number one is actually the Prophet Consultation. The Prophet did not stick to his opinion, even though he had an opinion. But he went to the majority because he found the majority of the Muslims wanted to go to that. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran in Surah Al-Imran, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. So once you are ready, فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. So the Prophet ﷺ was described as a one leaning, or the one who has a heart, a tender heart and a merciful heart, and also consulting with the believer. That's number one. Number two is exposing the hypocrites and the people that were driven from their own desires, not just for the sake of Allah. Number three is the Prophet followed all the means and possible means, even though he relied on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and depended on him. He followed all the possible means, and they had all the tactics and all the strategies intact, except the disobedience from the archers, the 50 archers, or the majority of the 50 archers. If they stayed there, regardless, taking the advice of the Prophet, not the advice, the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ not to leave their places, that would be a different story in history. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching us through these events to learn from history. That's number three. Number four is the sacrifice, the pure love and sacrifice from the companions of the Prophet to protect their messenger, like Abu Bakr and Abu Ubaidah and some other companions of the Prophet ﷺ, like Umara and Abi Talha and so many other companions, that they fought until the last breath to defend the Prophet ﷺ, knowing that if one of them was killed, that's one person, but if that person was killed, that would be a challenge for the Muslims afterwards, especially early on in that, because that was 3 years after his immigration or to Medina, or 32 months. Also, when we know that, that's number 4. Number 5 is the Muslims followed also the strategic plans by the Prophet, sending some Muslims to do that, some Muslims to check if the army is going to Medina or not. Now, after this, after the Meccan left, the Prophet ﷺ went downhill again, took the watch and checked the martyrs of Uhud, and he buried all of them. And that's, we took some legislation here that the martyrs are not washed, they are not bathed. The martyrs in the battles, they're not bathed. They were buried with their own blood, with their own clothes, with everything. They buried, the Prophet ﷺ buried them, and they prayed a funeral prayer for them with their clothes and all of that. And he prayed funeral prayer for each one of them with the Prophet ﷺ's uncle Hamza. This is why Hamza was called Sayyid al-Shuhada, the leader of the martyrs, because the Prophet prayed for him. And about that, once the Prophet ﷺ knows about the death of Hamza, he was really saddened. He was really, because Hamza was his, not just his uncle, he was his brother in breastfeeding, and he was his friend. He was very close to him, and he loves him, and they were super close to each other. So the Prophet ﷺ cried for Hamza and wept for Hamza, and he was really kind of like saddened by this. So Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib was one of the biggest martyrs. That's also one of the lessons that we can learn. Also, one of the lessons that we can learn is the sacrifice of the companions. Like someone called Anas ibn Nadr. Anas ibn Nadr was telling Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, one of the leaders of the Muslims as well, telling them, I see this, or I smell the taste of Jannah, or paradise here. And then he went down, and then he was killed. He was sacrificing everything. Some others were kind of like, it's not between me and Jannah except like bunch of dates or something like that. So also, so many people like that, kind of like sacrificing for sacrificing for the Prophet ﷺ and others. We have someone beautiful like Umayr. Like I do want to talk about each one of them, like Mus'ab ibn Umayr, Abdullah ibn Jahsh, Hanzala. Hanzala has a really beautiful story. Hanzala was just married. He just married before the Muslims left Medina, and that was his like first day after marriage. When he heard the calling for jihad, or the calling for defending Medina, he left and he didn't bathe. So he had janaba, and he didn't bathe, and then he went to the battle and he was killed. Hanzala ibn Amr al-Ansari. The Prophet ﷺ asked and said, why Hanzala? I see the angels bathing Hanzala, because as a martyr in the battle, he should be buried with his clothes. So the angels, the Prophet ﷺ, they found his body wet, and the Prophet ﷺ asked about this, and they told him that his body is wet. They said, I saw the angels bathing him. And then when he asked later about it, his wife, she told him that was his marriage night, and he didn't bathe after he met his wife, and they had intercourse and all that, and he did not bathe, and he went on in the battle. This is why the angels were bathing him. So you see a lot of stories like that. You see stories, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Haram, he was the one that was asking the hypocrites to come back and defend the Medina. He was killed in that. Khaythama Abu Sa'd, some other Wahb ibn al-Muzani, and his nephew Amr ibn al-Jamuh, and so many others, and Huzaifa ibn al-Yaman, Abu Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman's father, and Thabit ibn Qais, and so many other people that were murders, and some like of the great companions, they were murders. So the battle ended with that. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we will talk about the aftermath of the battle and what happened and how struggles were in Medina, and then we will talk about famous events to the next major battle that happened in year number 4 or roughly 5. It's called the Battle of Trench, or the Battle of Confederates. Is not just this. Quraysh will not be happy with that. They will try again to come to Medina, to attack Medina again. So inshallah, we will learn from the events from this battle all the way until the next one, that when Quraysh was coming again to attack Medina, and they will stop at this, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, I appreciate it. Sorry for taking too much time and starting late today. We tried to finish that. Read about these ones more, and there's so many resources out there you can learn more. And of course, like having this congested in like 50 minutes or 40 minutes is not going to be fair for each and every details of that, but because of the time tightness, just trying to keep it concise and kind of open your curiosity to look more for reading more about these ones. And there's so many resources you can find, and I will be more than happy to help out with helping with the resources. Jazakumullah khair. I really appreciate your time, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.